Have you ever had a day where one sentence ruins everything? Maybe someone at school said something small like, "Why do you look so tired today?" Maybe a teacher pointed out one mistake. Maybe a friend responded with a dry K. And even though nothing huge happened, suddenly your mood dropped. Your whole day felt heavier. You couldn't focus. Everything annoyed you. But here's something almost nobody knows. That emotional punch in your stomach only lasts 90 seconds. Unless you keep feeding it, 90 seconds, that's it. After that, your brain naturally clears the stress chemicals, unless you replay the moment again and again. And that's what we all do. We replay the comment. We imagine what we should have said. We build a whole argument in our head. We let the story grow until it takes over our day. But imagine this. What if you never had to get stuck in that loop again? What if one annoying comment didn't have the power to hijack your mood? What if no classmate, no teacher, no friend, no stranger online could bother you anymore? This isn't about being emotionless. It's not about pretending you're fine. It's not about just ignore it, because that clearly doesn't work. It's about learning how your mind actually processes anger, how your emotions rise, why they take over, and how you can take the steering wheel back. Picture a version of you who stays calm even when someone is rude. A version of you who doesn't get dragged into fights. A version of you who can feel emotions without letting them control everything. That version of you is not imaginary. It's not rare. It's not only for people who meditate for 2 hours every morning. It's a skill, one you can learn one step at a time. Today, you're going to learn how to never get angry or bothered by anyone again. Not by avoiding people, not by suppressing your feelings, but by finally understanding what's happening inside you. Ready? Let's go deeper. Think back to the last time you got angry, not furious, just irritated, annoyed, thrown off balance. Maybe it was something small, a friend walking past you without saying hi, or someone laughing right after you answered a question in class, or a teammate giving you that, "Are you serious?" look during group work, or your parents comparing you to someone else again. Your chest tightened, your face got warm, your mind started racing, and suddenly your whole focus for the day shifted. But here's the truth most people never learn. Anger is not the first emotion. It's the bodyguard standing in front of the real ones. Underneath anger, there is usually something softer. Hurt, embarrassment, fear of not being enough, feeling ignored, feeling disrespected, feeling like your effort isn't recognized. But anger rises first because it feels safer. Think about it. It's easier to be angry than to admit, "That comment actually hurt me. It made me feel small. I felt invisible." And because no one teaches us how to understand these deeper emotions, we react with the only tool we know, anger. But reacting with anger is like pouring gasoline on a small flame. It gets bigger, hotter, harder to control, and eventually you're dealing with a whole fire instead of the tiny spark that started everything. Here's the second truth we were never taught. You always have a moment, a tiny invisible moment, where you can choose your response. Between the trigger and your reaction, there is space, and in that space lies every skill you need to become emotionally untouchable. Most people never see that space. They jump straight from feeling to reaction, from discomfort to anger, from insecurity to defensiveness. But once you learn to notice that small space, you become the author of your emotional life instead of a character being dragged through it. Over the next sections, you're going to learn exactly how to claim that space, how to spot your triggers, how to stop the 90-second emotional wave instead of feeding it, how to rewrite the stories your mind creates, and how to stay calm even in the chaos. To understand why people can bother you so easily, you need to learn about something I call the invisible buttons. You've probably said this before. They know exactly how to push my buttons. They always know what sets me off. That one person can ruin my mood instantly. But here's the honest truth. No one can push buttons you don't give them. Those buttons already exist inside you. They're made of old experiences, old fears, old insecurities. And people aren't creating those buttons, and they're exposing them. For example, a classmate makes a joke about your clothes. Why does it sting? Not because of the joke, but because deep down you worry about being judged. A teacher says, "You can do better." Why does it bother you? Not because of the words, but because you fear not being enough. A friend forgets to invite you to something. Why does it hurt? Not because of the event, but because you fear being left out. The moment you realize this, everything changes. You stop seeing people as button pushers and start seeing triggers as messages about yourself. The next time someone annoys you, try asking, what exactly inside me reacted to that? What did this remind me of? Why did this matter so much? This tiny question will interrupt the entire emotional loop. It pulls you out of autopilot and gives you clarity. Now let's talk about the 90-second rule again, because it's a game changer. When someone says or does something triggering, your brain releases a wave of stress chemicals. Your heart beats faster, your stomach tightens, your body prepares for anger. But that chemical wave lasts only 90 seconds. If your anger lasts longer, it's because your thoughts keep restarting the cycle. You replay the comment, you analyze the tone, you imagine what you should have said, and each replay resets the 90 seconds. You're not feeling the trigger anymore. You're feeling the story you built around it. This is why two people can react differently to the same situation. One moves on in seconds, the other stews for hours. The difference? One doesn't add a story, the other does. Once you learn to interrupt the story, you stop feeding the fire. Now let's talk about your superpower, the moment between trigger and reaction. It's called the choice point. Picture this. Someone sends you a passive-aggressive message. You feel that instant spike of irritation. Your brain screams, "Answer back right now." Your fingers are ready to type the perfect comeback. But right there, in that split second, you have a choice. Most people never see this choice point. They leap straight from emotion to reaction. That's why arguments explode. That's why people say things they regret. That's why tiny problems become drama. But emotionally strong people, they pause, even for just 1 second. And in that second, they choose their response instead of being controlled by emotion. Here's a simple question that activates your choice point. What response would I be proud of tomorrow? Not proud in a fake way, proud in a "I didn't let that person control my mood" way. This question pulls you out of the emotional storm and back into your thinking brain, the part that makes calm decisions. Now let's introduce another powerful tool, the observer self. Inside your mind, there are two roles, the part that feels the emotion, the part that notices the emotion. Most people live entirely in the first one. They feel anger and become the anger. They feel embarrassment and turn it into shame. They feel fear and immediately react as if it's danger. But the observer does something different. It notices without reacting. Instead of, "This person is making me angry," try, "I notice anger rising." Instead of, "They're disrespecting me," try, "I'm having the thought that this feels disrespectful." This might sound small, but it creates emotional space. A moment where you're no longer swallowed by the feeling. And in that space, you can choose. Here's the final idea in this section. Reframing difficult people. What if every annoying person in your life is actually a trainer for your emotional strength? The impatient teacher, teaching you patience. The classmate who nitpicks, teaching you boundaries. The sibling who always argues, teaching you emotional control. Difficult people don't block your growth. They trigger your growth. And once you start seeing them this way, they lose the power to ruin your day. Here's the part that shocks most people. You're not actually angry at what people do. You're angry at the story your mind tells about what they do. Your friend didn't reply to your message. Story, they don't care about me. Emotion, anger mixed with insecurity. Your classmate didn't hold the door for you. Story, they think they're better than me. Emotion, annoyance mixed with hurt. Your teacher spoke with a sharp tone. Story, they're targeting me. Emotion, defensiveness mixed with fear of judgment. But what if none of those stories are true? What if your friend was busy? What if your classmate didn't even notice you behind them? What if your teacher was stressed about something unrelated? Same situation, different story, different emotional outcome. Your emotions follow your interpretation, not the event itself. This is why two people can experience the same situation, yet feel completely different. One person gets bumped in the hallway and thinks, "It's crowded, no big deal." Another thinks, They did that on purpose. Guess who stays angry longer? The most powerful emotional skill you can develop is learning to question your first story. Next time you feel anger rising, ask, is this the only possible explanation? What else could be true? What story would calm me instead of inflaming me? This isn't about lying to yourself. It's about refusing to torture yourself with assumptions. And here's the real breakthrough. Once you control the story, no one controls your emotions. People lose the ability to ruin your day because you stop handing them the pen. You become the narrator, not the character being tossed around by the plot. Microtension. Think of the last time you were extremely upset. Now imagine if your first interpretation had been different. How much energy would you have saved? How many hours of stress would you have avoided? Once you understand this, anger stops being a storm you get trapped in and becomes a signal, a message, something you can work with. This is emotional freedom, and it's a skill you can practice starting today. Let's bring everything together. Anger isn't your enemy. It's a messenger. It shows up when something inside you needs attention. A fear, a memory, a wound, a value. And that first wave of emotion, it lasts only 90 seconds. If you don't feed it with thoughts, it dissolves on its own. Your triggers aren't random. They reveal where you still need healing. They reveal what matters to you. They reveal the parts of yourself you've been avoiding. But once you see them clearly, they lose their power. You also learned about the choice point, that tiny moment between trigger and reaction where emotional mastery is built. Most people miss it, but you won't anymore, because now you know it exists. And once you know, you can never unsee it. You learned about your observer self, the part of you that can notice emotions without drowning in them. The part that says, I notice anger rising instead of this anger is who I am. That tiny shift creates space. Space creates clarity. Clarity creates strength. And you learned about reframing, the skill that turns difficult people into emotional trainers. They don't block your growth. They accelerate it. Finally, you learn the truth that changes everything. You're not reacting to reality. You're reacting to the story you tell yourself about reality. Change the story and you change your emotional experience. Now imagine the person you're becoming. Someone who doesn't get thrown off by rude comments. Someone who doesn't replay embarrassing moments all day. Someone who stays grounded, steady, calm. Someone who chooses their response instead of being controlled by emotion. That person is already inside you. You're not becoming someone new. You're uncovering who you were always meant to be. Your next step is simple. Pick one technique from today. Just one. Use it tonight. Use it tomorrow. Use it for a week. Small changes don't feel powerful at first, but they compound. They grow. They transform you. Start with one small change. Your peace is still yours. You just have to claim it back.